supply chainers, wherever you are in the world. This is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey with you today. Are you ready? Let's talk supply chain. Good morning, everyone, and happy Tuesday. Welcome to another episode of Thoughts and Coffee. My name is Sarah Barnes-Humphrey, founder and host of Let's Talk Supply Chain, as well as the Blended podcast and founder of the Blended Pledge. And I'm super excited today because my trade bestie is back in the hot seat, Audrey Ross, and we're going to get to her in just a minute. But first, we've got to talk about everything that is happening at Let's Talk Supply Chain. So we've got a brand new podcast episode for you, either on Spotify or Apple. We've also got it over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain YouTube page, and it's with Bill of One Rail. And I sat down with him in person at Home Delivery World just about a month ago and really dove into what exactly they do at One Rail. And you're going to be surprised because it has nothing to do with rail. The name actually comes from his background in finance. And there's a finance term that he uses within this particular episode. I've heard from a couple of people about how much they learned within even the first 10 minutes of this conversation. So go and check it out. It's episode 349, wherever you listen to the podcast. What else have we got going on? So tomorrow, I am going live at 2 p.m. Eastern with Jean, Aaron, Mohan, and we're talking about breaking the barriers or falling behind, unlocking the future of logistics. Now, we have almost 300 people signed up for this particular event, so you do not want to miss out. Even if you cannot attend live, go and click the attend button, and I will send you the recording so you do not miss a minute of that. And then on Friday, Eric is going live across the Let's Talk Supply Chain channels for LogTech Live, talking about transitioning from supply chain disruptor to incumbent. I can't wait for that one. And again, click the attend button, and I will send you the recording. What else have we got going on? So every Thursday morning, Mike Bush from Envase comes at us with a minute or two about what is going on in supply chain with the Supply Chain Minute. And last week, he talked about track and trace visibility, which I remember from my logistics days is huge, right? Everybody wants to know where their shipment is. Everybody wants to know if there's gonna be delays or any disruptions. So go and check out that episode over on the Let's Talk Supply Chain LinkedIn. And then, of course, we are going to be launching the Secret Society of Supply Chain very, very soon. Now, I have just gathered all the exclusive content. Let me tell you, you are going to hear from some of the biggest retail names about what is happening in their supply chain, what they've learned, what you can learn from them. So go and click on the link, sign up, take the quiz, sign up for the wait list, and as soon as we launch, you will be one of the first people to know. For the Supply Chainers group, we are giving away 10 pairs of Nike Air Force Ones. For the Woman in Supply Chain group, that's a monthly meetup group, and it's going to be professionally facilitated, and we've got some really amazing facilitators that I cannot wait to share with you. And then we've got the creative room for marketing professionals in supply chain. All right, without further ado, but before we bring up Audrey, I do need to mention our show sponsor. So say you're at work and all the lights flicker and then go out. You try to move and bump into something. You turn and bump into something else. You can't work like this. You need to be able to see what's happening. This is how your inventory feels. Fastenal has unique inventory solutions that sends data to the cloud and help you avoid stockouts while not carrying excess inventory. Don't stay in the dark. Let Fastenal shine a light on the parts and supplies that keep your business running. Go to fastenal.com/LTSC to see how they do it. All right. Audrey, good morning. How are you?
Good.
How was your vacation? You're like all refreshed and ready to go. There hasn't been any disruptions in 1 week for Audrey.
Yes, exactly. I did check on the port strike though. I didn't check anything. I took Teams off the phone. So, all the apps for work came off the phone.
Oh, wow.
Didn't look at anything. But I did check on that port strike because there were some concerns. But yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so it was a great week.
We'll get to that in a minute because you're going to give us a market update, I think.
Yeah.
But you had a great vacation. You went into the forest.
I did. I headed, so I'm in Toronto, and so about 2 hours north of the city, we have a beautiful, what we call our sort of cottage country. So I stay at a place with my friends on a river, and it's gorgeous, and there's lots of good swimming, and we eat lots of good food, and we read books, and it's nice and quiet, and I love it.
Oh, I'm so happy for you that you
Yeah.
had that week. All right, for
Yeah.
anybody who doesn't know who you are, let's give them an
All right.
introduction.
So I am currently the import and export compliance manager at Orchard Custom Beauty. Orchard is an award-winning business-to-business private labeling company specializing in beauty tools, cosmetics, and bath accessories. Right now, we ship to about 20 countries worldwide, but I'm still getting caught up on some emails. So who knows what happened last week? Could be 21. So how my work goes sometimes. So yeah, so I keep busy. I've got we're really excited. We did have our updated blended pledge board meeting last week. So we've got some exciting things coming up for blended, which I'm always excited about. And the other thing that I've got going on is the Organization of Women in International Trade. So if you're a part of OWIT, everybody's kind of gearing up for September already because the World Trade Organization Public Forum is coming up. So yeah, lots going on. Keep
That
busy.
is exciting. Yeah, we've got a lot of great announcements. Nicole, I don't
Yeah.
know if you have the link to the blended pledge page on LinkedIn, but maybe we can put that into the comments. You want to follow us because we've got
Yeah.
some major announcements coming up.
Yes.
Audrey and Gabby from the board are going to be at the New Face of Inclusion Summit in September here in
Yeah.
Toronto. And you're going to have a booth and all
Yeah.
sorts of really fun stuff that is happening. So if you have a speaking engagement that you've been asked to do in the fall, and you need help with travel,
Yeah.
go to blendedpledge.org and apply because
Yeah.
that's what those grants are for, is to really help with those travel expenses. So maybe
Yeah.
it's not you, maybe you know somebody, but send somebody over there and ask them to apply. Now, I just want to give some shout outs to Vamsi, Sheik, Michelle, Jory, Joe, Hossein, Dominica, and Shakawat over on my personal LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us. And look, we've got Pedro as well sneaking in there while I'm doing all my hellos. All right. So let's get to the poll of the week. So we ask you a question every single Wednesday morning. And this question we asked you last Wednesday: what makes an organization a great place to work? Now, we had 428 votes on this one.
Wow.
65% of you said culture of trust and respect. 29% of you said work-life harmony. 4% of you said supportive policies, and 1% said share your opinion below. What do you think about this, Audrey?
I fell in with the culture of trust and respect crowd. I think if you have that, I think there's a lot of companies that put together great policies, but actually living those policies or being able to utilize those policies is not going to happen if you don't have that culture of trust and respect. You know, if you're hiring people who really like their work, they're industry experts, they keep on top of what's going on in the market, and just have that attitude of like being part of the team. If there's a lack of culture, a lack of trust and respect, then they're not able to do their jobs to the best of their ability. There's always going to be like a sort of a disconnect there. So I think it was important. I think a lot of the comments reflected that too.
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I just recorded a blended podcast episode yesterday
Nice.
afternoon about victimhood. And one of the
Yeah.
things that came up was policies,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of things that can happen within a workplace.
Mhm.
And there are policies in place that don't necessarily reflect the new world and the
Mhm.
way things are happening right now, especially in diversity and inclusion. So I wanted
Yes.
to bring that up because I believe that 4% really reflects on that, in the fact that the policies just aren't supportive. So it's not
Yes.
that they don't want supportive policies, or that that's not something that doesn't make a great place to work. It
Mhm.
means that there's just not enough of it, or there's no conversation around it, or they haven't seen it actually be successful.
Yeah, I think that's a key thing. There's a big disconnect from you having the policies and you living the policies,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like you can put a bunch of stuff on paper, but employees can tell when they're being supported and when they're not, when they're trusted, when they're not.
Yeah. Absolutely. And Leslie said remote work was very important for her, which we did not list because we can't
Yeah.
list everything. They only give us
But the culture
4
of trust
options.
and respect plays into the work piece,
It
the
does.
work hybrid, work remote piece. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, let's get to the market update. Talk to us about the
Where?
strike. What
Oh
is
gosh.
happening in the industry?
13 days of strike. No vessels serviced on the West Coast, so Vancouver and Port Rupert, Prince Rupert. And the dwell time, it's funny because we've got a great article here, Lorianne Larocco. So the number of vessels waiting at Prince Rupert right now is 4. The number of vessels waiting at Vancouver is 9. So those, as of Thursday, will start to be offloaded. But what happened was there were more vessels that were waiting, but they got diverted to go back to the US ports. So most of the vessels that are coming over from Asia will have multiple stops on their route. So often they'll go to Canada first, like Prince Rupert, and then Vancouver first, and then go down to Seattle or maybe Los Angeles, Oakland. So they decided to just route them so they'll come back up. So that'll cause a delay if you have goods on those vessels, which I probably do. There's a lot of expectation of delay. Although we did see CN and CP, all the rail lines kind of pull, get ready, so they pulled a lot of containers over to the port just to be ready for when goods did offload. But I wanted to share just a couple of statistics because I think it shows you like those vessels that were waiting, that's about $7.5 billion worth of goods. And then the other impact that we have is as routings have changed, we've seen a lot of expansion in rail between Canada and the US. So we actually have about 15% of import volume going through Vancouver, and about 65% of Prince Rupert volumes are sent to US destinations and US inland port intermodal. So there's not just simply an effect on me personally here in Toronto getting my goods. There's actually it's a almost a North American effect when we do have these ports kind of go through this situation. And I think overall I'll share the article that has some of these numbers, but I think overall the situation is one where this was not a situation where they were negotiating and they started like a week ago.
Right.
They've been negotiating for like 2 years, 3 years. I mean, we can see the same thing with the contract negotiations in Los Angeles. Those started May 2020,
We started talking
2021.
about that. Yeah.
You're like, well, because you're
We
like,
were like,
okay,
it's
well, this is
coming.
going to happen in the next month. And it's like, here we go. So I think there's a low tolerance for that too. Because we already have enough disruptions from, I just had goods that were supposed to go on a flight on Sunday. They're going on Monday because there's a typhoon in Ningbo where they were going to depart. So like you have enough of that, like you're like, when you have these things that there's absolutely control over, it just is very, I think, frustrating and challenging for shippers, BCOs, people in the industry to understand, like, how did it take you 2 years and then 13 days of a strike to settle something that and especially when you go into what the details are, you're like, you're not that far away in your positions. The positions that you have are not unreasonable. So I think the tolerance for these sorts of like the kind of traditional strike tactics and the I don't know, aggressiveness. I don't know. I think people have lost their tolerance for that.
Well, and I think the other interesting thing that I read was that there was solidarity in other ports.
Oh,
and
yeah.
those ports are in the US. And
Yeah.
I was hearing mumblings of them actually refusing to take
Yeah.
the Canadian cargo off the vessels in
Yeah.
solidarity with the folks that were
Yeah.
picketing or,
Yeah. Well, and
in
I think we're
Canada.
seeing that everywhere. I think we're seeing a lot of that. We had in Toronto, we had some labor issues with a nurses union, and then you had a teachers, and like they just went together, and so
Yeah.
you're going to see the same thing in our industry. You're going to see ports are going to be like, well, if Vancouver's not taking us because of you're not giving them these and
Strike.
these labor clauses
Yeah.
that they probably may deserve to have, then we're not going to support you either. And it's a global community now.
Yeah.
Right. Especially in international shipping. So you're going to see
Yeah.
Rotterdam's not going to take your stuff. These people aren't.
And
So
then
it has to be more collaborative, and it is not regional anymore. So
Yeah, and I think we have to realize that, and that's one of the reasons why I want to bring that up, right? If we're standing in
yeah.
solidarity globally, What does
Yeah.
that mean when one country has a strike that everybody can be a part of?
Yeah.
And it's not just regionalized. Like that's what
No.
we have to start thinking about. And
Yeah.
that's where we change our and expand our thinking and perspectives and what is the impact down the line or
Mhm.
at the beginning of the line, right? Because it's kind of in the middle, right? How does it
Yeah.
impact everybody this way? How does it impact
This
everybody
impact
that way?
everybody else.
All right.
But that
So
trust and respect, culture of trust and respect.
very, very, very true. All right. So I don't know if any of you are tennis fans. I am definitely a tennis fan. My husband and I are going to be at the US Open on Labor Day weekend, which we're super excited about. But Wimbledon just finished. And
Mhm.
S&P Global wrote this really fun article about tennis ball supply chains. If any of you know about my journey, you know that when I first started Let's Talk Supply Chain, I worked as a receptionist at an indoor tennis club. And so this is actually fairly near and dear to my heart because one of the conversations that we had on a regular basis was what happens to the tennis balls when you're not using them at the tennis facility. And so this particular article goes into the fact that there are 3 million tennis balls made globally annually. That is a lot of rubber. That is a lot of tennis balls that go into the landfill, and approximately 125 million go into the landfills. That is a big, 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 big problem.
Mhm.
And the supply chains around tennis balls actually have challenges in a variety of different ways. One is labor violations. Two is carbon footprint, and three is the recycling component that I just mentioned. Which, to be honest with you, I actually didn't know. Thinking about the tennis ball supply chains, I knew the after effect. The circularity of it. There really isn't any. Are we recycling them? One of the ways that the tennis club that I worked at combated that was they gave tennis balls to the schools, and the tennis balls were put on the legs of the chairs so that they weren't scraping against the floors. And that was one way that those tennis balls were being recycled. So what did you think when you saw this? I thought this was a pretty cool article.
Yeah, I love this from Chris Rogers at SAP. But I think it covers. There's kind of three things that stood out for me in here. One, it goes into sort of where the supply chain is for tennis balls and the fact that it's shifted, right? So they imports from China have accounted for about 50% of shipments in the 2022 year, which is up from 40. So that's about a 10% increase.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been increasing over the last 5 years. And so they've also seen imports from Thailand and Pakistan increase. But it seems like they used to import from Philippines and EU, and those have declined. So it's an interesting way that I think all of us are seeing these sort of manufacturing shifts and
Mm-hmm.
nearshoring shifts. So that was an interesting piece, and also the timing of the orders, which really gets into the nitty gritty of like supply chain ordering, how they, would normally order them in this season, but they've been ordering them later. So there's some really good insights on that. And then the last piece I think is around the sustainability, right? So they're using a lot of scrap rubber, but apparently because of, and this, we run into this too a lot in cosmetics, the mix of rubbers in tennis balls, right? So the mix of materials that you're using makes the separation for recycling challenging because we're still, a lot of the ways we recycle are sort of by single source product.
Right.
But it looks like they've got, instead of looking at recycling, they're looking at reusing. So the sort of end of this article goes into how they're starting to use them instead of recycling them. They're putting them in floor surfaces, or like you said, they could use them for schools and sort of keep
Mm-hmm.
the longevity going. So I love this
Yeah.
one.
Well, and another fun fact about Wimbledon, because I was watching it, I've
Yeah.
been watching it nonstop. That one of the things that is like strawberries and cream, I think, is they're like, other than Pims, that's the thing that
Oh,
they're known
okay.
for as their snack. And
Yeah.
apparently they do vertical farming. on the Wimbledon grounds to be able to grow some of the strawberries that they are actually. So they are thinking
I love that.
along the lines of sustainability. And it would be
Yeah.
interesting to hear from somebody who has a connection to somebody in Wimbledon to find out what they actually do with those tennis balls, because I'd love to know.
Yeah.
Going back to your market update, DC has joined us. Hi, DC. Love the POV and
Hi.
update about the strikes. John said, this is no surprise for Prince Rupert. The port was developed with U.S. Midwest cargo in mind. We've got Tara, who's with us today. Sam is with us as well. Tara says, we are definitely seeing a rise in domestic moves and flatbed. And then Sam, going back to our poll, says, why is respect a complex topic? Not good. One can even be audacious and still show respect. I don't know. And Dominica, I love Audrey saying that employees know when they are trusted and respected. We've also got Hussein joining us today. So I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody who's making a comment over on my personal LinkedIn. All right, let's get to our second article. So this one kind of has a clickbaity title. It's like IMO on the brink of historic failure. But let me tell you, this has a huge impact on supply chains. Now, they gathered, I think it was last week or the week before. I don't know what the result of the talks were. Maybe you do, Audrey. But everybody was complaining about the goal of reducing 50% greenhouse gas by 2050. But if you talk to somebody like a Frances Edmonds, like I had on Thoughts and Coffee last week, she will say, why are we fighting this? We needed this by 2020. And so this is a problem, people. China is warning that overly ambitious goals is going to impede sustainable development of international shipping. It's going to increase the cost of supply chains, and it's going to impede the recovery of global economy. That is a bit of a scare tactic. We need this, guys. And all of these people are complaining about it. All of these countries are complaining that it's too fast. What's the alternative? What does the world look like by 2050?
And it's odd that China has a lot of environmental goals for their own local region. So it's interesting that they're pushing out on, that's a common tactic to push out on the international collaboration or international rules. But yeah, some of these countries already have a lot of environmental goals, and yet they're pushing back on these ones. So you're like, we all have to do this together.
Yeah. And is it because of competition?
Probably.
Is it because that we don't want to come together in a collaborative way to be able to solve some of these issues? I don't know.
That seems to be a big part of it. We've seen a lot of fractional and shifting in sort of the geopolitical situation. We do see a lot of countries kind of moving ahead and doing things that you're like, it's contradictory to what you have for your domestic policies. Because like I say, a lot of these countries have their own domestic policies around greening, recycling, sustainability, like all of these things. And yet when they come out onto this playing field, apparently it just becomes completely, I think for the rest of us, it seems almost irrational, right? We can tell that climate change is coming. So we have to do something about this. We can't do it alone. Like you recycling your little thing every day, it helps, but like, let's be serious. Like if countries cannot come together on this, it's a human crisis. It's not I live in Canada, it's a little Canadian problem. Like it's not. It's a human crisis. So to see them behave in this way internationally, and we keep seeing it, right? You see it in sort of in the IMO, you see it in other groups as well, the UN, the World Trade Organization. Like you keep seeing it, and it's like you're behaving so irrationally here, and that's what's causing the disruption, the delay. So then anything that you're doing at home really isn't going to have the impact that we need. So it does say, I see from S&P they updated that they did tighten the decarb targets for shipping. They confirmed the development of some new fuel standards and a pricing mechanism for greenhouse gas emissions. But industry stakeholders are still saying that the compromise deal might still fail to accelerate the emissions reduction sufficiently. But that is the update. They did seem to come a little closer together. I thought it was interesting because the headline is clickbait because it's not that the IMO is failing itself. It's that they're failing on this specific topic.
Yeah. Well, and I just get so frustrated because we're talking about this. A lot of organizations are talking about it. I feel like that maybe the pressure is not there though, right?
Yeah,
And we
and
can't just have
businesses
words at this
want
point.
guidelines, and
Yeah.
we prefer consistency and like predictability. So we can
Yeah.
see the EU is working on a really big framework and shift in regulations, and people are keeping their eye on that. To be able to meet those standards. Companies, like, I just want to know what we're going to set the standard to, ideally, so we can meet it or exceed it, right? We all want to
Yeah.
do better, but it does help to have some of those frameworks in place, because you as an individual company, as much as we're working, we're like, our company's been working really hard on like our EcoVadis achievements. We're part of the MacArthur Foundation. Like, so you're trying to do all of these things, but then it's like, but how can I have standardization with companies that aren't in that stream yet?
Yeah. Well, and that's what Francis and I were talking about last week is what is the path to 2050? So
Yeah.
we're arguing about something when we don't even have a plan in place and we don't really
Yeah.
even know what that looks like.
Yeah.
anyways, just wanted to bring it up to everybody's attention, because I think, with the way that we have seen the weather over the last couple of weeks, it has affected people very differently. We've still got heat warnings, right? And so it's affecting us on a personal level. But the fact that they're actually bringing supply chain and international shipping and global economy into the mix of this conversation as to whether we can hit a 2050 goal for sustainability is going to affect you as supply chain professionals and as organizations. So thank you, Berkeley. Berkeley came up with what happens to the balls at Wimbledon. Thank you so much. I will share that on my personal LinkedIn so everybody can check that out as well after the show. I appreciate you for doing that. All right, our last article, we only have a few minutes left. So AI could remove all human touch points in supply chain. Now, this is interesting because everything we've been talking about for the last little bit is no, this isn't going to happen. And then all of a sudden, CNBC is like, yep, it's absolutely happening, people. So they're talking about AI removing all back office tasks. They're talking about freight transportation, how autonomous trucks reduce cost per mile by 25 to 30%. And at the end of this article, it actually quotes somebody from Maersk saying that they're adopting AI in a big way and they are pursuing it aggressively. Those were the words used in this particular article. How does this make you feel as a supply chain professional? I mean, I think there are some great use cases for AI, but this particular article coming out and saying that it's going to remove all human touch points, I don't think is realistic. But
well, yeah, we're looking at an industry that has, for like, I don't know, 10, 15 years, been talking about visibility technology, and we still haven't adopted it, and we're still not there. True. So, I mean, let's be serious. The ability for this sector to adopt technology cohesively, it's still in its, young phase. I think it was interesting, though, that it was the chief technology and info officer at Maersk, Navneet Kapoor, talking about AI and machine learning, right? They've existed for a long time. That's true. Like these abilities to some extent have been around. We've known about it. So his position is that it's progressed from being research projects to real projects within companies. And now that they have this sort of generative AI, which is sort of a new level of it, we are seeing, they have a pivoting opportunity to take it sort of more mainstream. So instead of maybe internal projects, it can be customer facing projects or more directly in the supply chain. My position overall for technology tends to be, if it means that you're not sitting there doing the job that like a robot could do, and it means you have time to go out and do the strategy and the analysis and the insights, the assessments, the thinking, the art, the creativity, I'm for it. I think a lot of this, again, with any technology, we get these scary things like it's going to take all the jobs. It's going to take a sector of jobs. And the responsibility of our industry is to make sure that people are receiving the skills and training, the upskilling and training that they need to then work in this environment. Do I think in the next 2 years, it's just going to be a comprehensive across the board technology that we're all using? Absolutely not. That's not seemingly how this industry can work. I'd be excited if it could. But yeah, I think is it on the horizon and on the mindset for some people? Yes, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, last but not least, we've got where we're going to be coming up. So again, we've got Log Tech Live on Friday. I'm going live with Wise Tech tomorrow. We've got the Woman in Supply Chain Forum in November 14th and 15th. And then I'm going to be back next week with Yifat from OSA Commerce, and we're going to be talking all about supply chain. So thank you so much to everybody who joined us this week. Audrey, thank you so much for joining us after your vacation. And next week, I'm going to be on vacation. I'm going to be coming at you from Florida. So I hope everybody has an amazing week ahead. And again, thanks for joining us.